Welcome, everyone, to the NFL show on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. I'm your host, Sam Teets, and right now, I'd like to welcome my special co-host for the day, Mark Formichelli. How you doing, Mark?
Doing good, Sam. How about you?
I'm doing all right. So today, we're going to cover something a little bit different. We're going to be talking about a lot about the NFC East, doing a little bit of news about the division, covering a little bit of everything. But I wanted to start off with your favorite team, the Philadelphia Eagles. You have a very serious injury. Brandon Brooks, all-pro offensive guard, suffers a ruptured Achilles, but you bring in Jason Peters to replace him. How do you feel about the moves?
Well, first and foremost, obviously losing Brandon Brooks is huge. One of, if not the best right guard in football, probably up there with Zach Martin too. Speaking of the NFC East, so his loss is going to be tremendous. But bringing Jason Peters in, I think, is the right move. There was a lot of talk about possibly trading for some guards. There's a guard from the Patriots I know who just they franchise tag. They might try to bring him in. I'm glad they didn't do that. Jason Peters was the right move because he's familiar with the system, the offense in general, and then I think transitioning to guard won't be that hard for him because he was kind of the anchor of that offensive line for years. So I'm assuming he knows all the assignments. He's going to know what to do. Maybe talent and health-wise, he's not as well. I mean, Brandon Brooks just got hurt, but reliability is what I mean. So Brandon Brooks suffered a major injury in the offseason. Jason Peters seems to suffer like little nagging injuries throughout the season. So we'll see how that comes into play. But I like the move. I think it was the right thing to do. I think they signed him for a little bit too much, but Jason Peters thinks he's worth that kind of money at 38 years old. So we'll see how it plays out. But as of now, on paper, I really do like the move. I think it was the right thing to do.
Now, obviously, it's going to still hurt Eagles' offensive line a little bit, but I think getting Peters back and bringing him in as a guard was probably the best move he could have made at this point in the offseason. Short of signing someone like Larry Warford, but at the same point, he would have cost way too much, I think, compared to what you pay Peters. But, I mean, how do you feel about the Eagles moving forward? Because I know they've had injury issues in the past, specifically, I mean, last couple of years, especially last year, injuries really caused a major issue for them. Do you think you're going to see more of the same this year, or do you think they're actually be healthy and stay healthy throughout the year?
I think they're gonna stay healthy and they'll be healthy to start and then stay healthy throughout the season. Obviously, no team. It's very rare for a team to have no major injuries to a starter or an impact player. But to my knowledge, the Eagles have completely revamped their medical staff, their training, and then the medical specifically. So I think the guy they hired won an award or something for sports medicine. So they're definitely focusing on that because of what happened last season. So my assumption is the injuries will get the issues will get fixed up for this upcoming season. So I think they can definitely stay healthy. The only injuries to be concerned about are the ones that are coming in from last year. So Alshon Jeffrey's probably going to start the year on the PUP list, and then we'll see where he plays out if he even plays the season. There's some rumors about that. But I think the Eagles, I think they'll be good this season. Obviously, like we said, losing Brandon Brooks, 3 Pro Bowls in a row the past 3 years, losing that Pro Bowl guard is going to hurt a little bit. But I think with all the talent they have on offense now and a younger defense, they really focused in this offseason on becoming a younger team, and they want to develop those players. So maybe, they're not going to go back to 13-3 like they were when they won the Super Bowl that year. But hopefully in a weak division, they'll come out on top of the division at a 9-7, 10-6, and then grow from here. Hopefully, assuming the season plays out the way we want it to.
All right, so let's transition to my next topic. I want to talk about Washington, and there's going to be a lot to talk about with this team. They have come out and they said the new name, or at least the name they're going to roll with temporarily, is the Washington Football Team. Mark, what do you think? I can already tell from the reaction on your face. What do you think about the new temporary team name?
I mean, it's okay because they came out and they said it's temporary, at least for this season. So I give them the benefit of the doubt because I don't know if a lot of people know about this, but a couple weeks ago, a story came out that some random company in Virginia or Maryland trademarked like a bunch of NFL team names or names that would be worthy of being like a professional sports team name. So my assumption with this move is, all right, they're prepping to go to legal war with that company to get whatever name that they want. So to play under the guise of Washington Football Team for the 2020 season, like I think it's stupid, yes, but I understand like the background knowledge that goes into it. The uniform still doesn't look cool. Reminds me of Alabama a lot, where they just throw the number decal on the helmet instead of a logo. So, and the color scheme still works. So hopefully they get the name they want after this season. But yeah, 100%. It's just stupid because they waited 2 weeks to reevaluate the name, and that's what they came up with. But like I said, there's probably a legal battle going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, I just felt it was kind of dumb because you put yourself in a situation where there's been people wanting to change this name for the last 30 years. It's not something that's happened. Like, it's not some, like, people get all upset about cancel culture and that kind of stuff recently. It's nothing to do with that. It's been something that's been going on for 3 decades at least.
Oh, so, yeah, I remember being a kid and they would talk about changing the name. So
yeah, I mean, Washington's known about this forever. Dan Snyder's known about this. Yes. But my question is, how do you not have some kind of plan B in place? How do you not have anything set up for when this does happen? Because that's what I think the NFL in general has shown the last couple of weeks. They have not been prepared, and especially the Redskins. They haven't been prepared. They haven't been proactive in necessarily looking and playing for the future. Well, I just call them the old name now, but Washington has been. It's going to take me a couple of months, honestly, to fix it because the same thing happened when the Chargers moved from San Diego to Los Angeles. Honestly, it took me 3 months to get down. So it's going to be. I
still call them San Diego sometimes. Yeah. So yeah, I agree. It's going to take some good news.
It's going to be a little while, but Washington, obviously undergoing a lot of changes. I think it's dumb they didn't have a plan in place to replace the name. I think they missed out on a good marketing opportunity, I would say, to change the name, put new stuff out, new gear out necessarily, and make a lot of money off that. I think they're pushing that back a little bit now. But at the same point, they've come up, they said it's a temporary name. Who knows what they can do moving forward. I do expect they'll actually come up with a real name eventually, just because you think you have to, right? You have to change the name, pick another one. Yeah,
I agree.
You can't stay with it.
No, you can't just stay the Washington football team for. So I'm glad that they said that it was temporary because that at least gives us some indication that they have a plan or something going forward, like I said. But yeah, it's just it was ridiculous when I was actually at work on my lunch break and I saw the notification come up and I was like, of course, leave it to Dan Snyder, right? That's what he comes up with.
And speaking of Dan Snyder, I mean, we're going to get into something here, but there was a report that came out, or a story that came out from the Washington Post. I don't think it was this past week, maybe it was like 2 weeks ago now, but a report came out about the internal climate of the Washington football team and things that have been going on since dating back to 2006 up to this past year. Cases of sexual harassment. I think there was 15 separate women who came forward, although only one was like specifically named, saying they have different instances where they were sexually harassed, people made unwanted advances on them. The Redskins knew about this apparently recently as 2 years ago maybe, and they haven't really fixed the climate. Now it went public. Mark, let me ask you this. Dan Snyder, he was not named as a specific person who committed any acts or anything like that, but at the same point, he's obviously negligent in this whole situation. Since he's a team owner, he's proactive within the organization usually. Mm-hmm. So let me ask you this. Should Dan Snyder be removed from his ownership of the Washington football team?
It's a tough question because obviously you have to look at it in a bubble from strictly this sexual harassment standpoint. You could say what you want about how the the Washington football team performs on the field and their job in signing and trading for guys front office, but that shouldn't factor into what an owner has over his team. You have to look at this sexual harassment bubble. And the fact that, like you said, he wasn't specifically named as someone who performed the acts or whatever, but at the end of the day, it's his team. He's the owner for a reason. He sets the tone. He decides what the culture is going to be, what the mindset's going to be in that building day in and day out. And for him to know about it and kind of sweep it under the rug and not do anything about it, you could look at it as inexcusable, especially in today's day and age where a lot of people it's a sensitive topic because of more and more the past 5 years, a bunch of accusations in every industry has come out. And you look at how they handle that. So I think the NFL will certainly look into that as an option. I don't know that they would do it given the circumstances surrounding the start of the season, the future of play. I know they did just work out a deal, but that could easily impact it if Washington needs to look for a new bidder. So I'm going to say for now, no, he doesn't need to be removed. I think he does need to come out and make a statement and then give specific examples because it's easy to say like, okay, yeah, we're going to fix it and then not do it. I think he's going to have to come out and say, all right, we're going to do employee training. We're going to change this about the culture, he has to like give specific reasons or specific actions that he's going to do on behalf of the team.
Yeah, I think he needs to put a plan in place at the very least. I had someone tell me that they should try to handle this internally. I think the time to handle that internally is past, honestly, just because if this has been going on since 2006, clearly you had chances probably somewhere along the line to fix this. You clearly haven't.
Yeah.
So this is now a time where it's going to be handled publicly. It's going to be handled in a very public manner.
Yeah.
I think you could justify getting rid of Dan Snyder because of this. And I think Washington football fans wouldn't that be that upset if Dan Snyder kicked out of ownership because of this, because most of them will just tell you the people they've had in power in that organization the last couple of years are Dan Snyder yes men, whether it be general manager or even head coach with Jay Gruden. So I think Washington fans wouldn't be that upset. I think the team would be better off without Dan Snyder as the owner. That being said, I don't think they're going to get rid of him. I really don't think they will. They forced Jerry Richardson to sell the Carolina Panthers a couple of years ago, but that was when there was actually allegations of workplace misconduct directly against Richardson.
Right.
There are actually instances of that. In this case, it's not the same thing. Although I think Daniel Snyder should be held responsible for his negligence within his own organization because he's one of the more active owners, I think you could say, within their team. So I think he should be held responsible in some manner or form. You even have minority owners in the organization trying to sell their shares of the team, which you don't see happen a lot because usually the NFL just prints monies for anyone involved. So I think it's a very rare instance. I think you could justify forcing him out. I wouldn't care if it was forced out, but I don't think they will ultimately.
No.
But on to some more positive news. Alex Smith has been cleared for football activities. Now, if you don't remember what happened to Alex Smith, he suffered a very devastating tibia and fibula fracture back in 2018. I think it was like a couple weeks into the season, maybe 5 or 6 weeks in. He hasn't played since then. And really, it wasn't the fracture itself, of course, was devastating, but the fracture itself wasn't the biggest issue that he had to deal with. He got infected in the leg after he had surgery. He's on the compound fracture. There was an infection. He has suffered, well, since then, he's gone through over a dozen surgeries. And there was fear at one point he might even lose his leg. Now, of course, battling back, he's been cleared for football activities. Mark, let me ask you this. If Alex Smith is healthy, should he start, and he could actually play football again, should he start for the Washington football team?
It's a tough question. I look at it from two sides. The positive side is you look at how he was playing and how Washington was performing back in 2018 when he was the quarterback, and they were actually doing very, very well as a team. And then he got hurt, and it's been kind of a downward spiral since then. The flip side of that is he's now 36 years old and hasn't played. It'll be 2 years since he's played football come the season in the fall. So, and coming off this major injury. So 2 huge impacts on your body, age and injury recovery. It'll affect his performance, I'm assuming. So I'm excited to see the training camp battle. I'm assuming they're going to have a competition and they're not just going to, with Ron Rivera being the new head coach, he's not just going to hand the job to either Kyle Allen, Dwayne Haskins, or Alex Smith. I think Alex Smith is probably still the best QB in that room because Haskins severely underperformed last year. Kyle Allen actually had a decent season with the Panthers. And obviously that's why Ron Rivera decided to bring him in. But I think Alex Smith should probably be the starter. I think he will come out on top after that training camp battle, but it seriously hinders big asterisks next to his age and the fact that he's recovering from this injury.
Yeah, I'm just curious to see what he's going to look like because I know he's been obviously training to keep in football shape to some degree and also with his arm in football shape. But at the same point, he hasn't been hit by a 300-pound defensive lineman in so long. So I think, and also you don't have preseason games this year, so you're not going to get that kind of experience. So my question is, yes, he's cleared for football activities, but is he ready to play football again? So I don't really know if that's going to be ready for week 1. I think he could be ready by the middle of the season, potentially, though. And if you're looking to win games at that point in the year, I don't know if Washington will be, but I think you could see Alex Smith make a return to football. You may comment about his age. You say 8, was it? Yeah, he's 36, actually. 36, so he's pretty – so 36, he's not honestly that old in comparison to some of the guys out there right now. We've got plenty of 38-year-olds in the league right now playing quarterback. Sure. He's actually younger than Aaron Rodgers at this point. So there's still, I think, a lot of potential for him to play 2 more years at the very least. I like where he was before he got hurt. I know people kind of think of him as a game manager, but honestly, I think there were years where he was a top 15, top 14 quarterback in the league. So I wouldn't be shocked if he comes back and he starts. I think he probably has a good chance to beat out Kyle Allen and Dwayne Haskins just because Dwayne Haskins played poorly last year, but the exception of like 1 or 2 games down the stretch.
Right.
And Kyle Allen did okay in like his first, I want to say, 6 games with the Carolina Panthers, but after that, things just fell apart. He threw 17 touchdowns and 16 interceptions in the year.
Yeah.
So I think Alex Smith could do wonders for the team. It's just the question of whether Washington actually wants him to be their starter. Because if Washington's okay with him starting, I think you'll see him be in a starting role by midseason. If they want to push Dwayne Haskins and essentially want Alex Smith to stand on the sideline, hold a clipboard, and be a mentor, then I don't think you will see him the entire year. So it really comes down to whether or not they feel comfortable with him as a starter or not.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, going back to what he did in that 2018 season, he started 9 games and they were at 6-3, which was pretty good for the 2018 season, given the competitiveness of the division that year. Performing at a high enough level to get them that record. So, like you said, we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, now that brings us to another topic I want to talk about for a different team. We're going to talk about the Dallas Cowboys and Dak Prescott. Now, Dallas Cowboys have franchise tagged Dak for this coming season. He'll be a free agent next year. Let me ask you this. He was offered at one point a 5-year deal that was worth roughly $35 million a year.
Mm-hmm.
And that would match him for the second most money made annually in a contract with Russell Wilson. Of course, Patrick Mahomes holds the record. I think it's at $45 million right now.
Yeah.
But Russell Wilson's in second place with 35. He turns that down to wants a 4-year deal so he can capitalize on new TV deals, which will come out sooner rather than later. Let me ask you this: is he crazy for like accepting a 5-year deal worth $35 million a year?
From a self standpoint, for his own well-being, no. Because like you mentioned, that TV deal. Also, it's in his best interest to sign a 4-year contract, and then assuming he'll still play at the same level, if not higher, in 4 years from now, he can sign another big money contract. So I get where he's coming from, where he doesn't want to sign a 5-year deal. He'd rather sign a 4-year and then a 1 or 2 year deal for more money after that. So from that standpoint, no, it makes sense. You're in what's best for yourself. From a team standpoint, I think it's stupid. If you offer a quarterback $35 million a year, you should take it, given the fact that he's definitely a top 10 quarterback. Obviously, guys don't get paid by their literal ranking in the league. Usually, like Jared Goff, I think when he signed his deal, it was the highest at that point, and he's not the best quarterback in the league by any means. So from a team standpoint, I think he probably should have signed that, especially because we don't know what Dallas is going to be like in a couple of years. They sign Amari Cooper, they have Zeke long term, and if they can't get Dak signed long term, then you lose your golden arm back there. Although I think Andy Dalton, now being the backup there, could probably come in and be a good game manager for them, given the fact that they have Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup, you have Zeke, and that offensive line. So anyone you put under center should perform well, which is the pessimistic half of the argument towards it. Well, is Dak really that good, or is it just the team around him? So yeah, I think he probably should have signed that 5-year deal, but I understand why he didn't from his own self-interest.
Well, now let me ask you this: if the Cowboys feel there's an option next year when Dak Prescott becomes another free agent, and the cap is going to take a hit, it can't go lower than $175 million next year. They've already negotiated that part in between the NFL and the NFLPA. But it's still a significant hit considering we're looking at a $198.2 million cap situation this year. We're talking about potentially cutting off $20 million.
Yeah.
So if Dallas enters next offseason, Dak Prescott's going to be a free agent.
Mm-hmm.
And he still wants $35 million a year. He wants something in that range. If you're Dallas, are you crazy to say, the heck with it, we're going to take Andy Dalton or Jameis Winston instead of paying Dak Prescott?
Absolutely not, especially given like you said, you mentioned the cap's going to drop. They have more players to pay. Like we mentioned, Cooper and Zeke signed those deals. So if you're loading up with weapons, like I said, anyone can pretty much throw the ball. Even Winston last year, yeah, he threw 30-plus interceptions, but he also threw over 30 touchdowns. And, I think I've seen the work that Winston's putting in the offseason. I think he could be a good quarterback again, given the chance to start. So No, I wouldn't blame Dallas, especially as an Eagles fan. Actually, there's an argument to be made that you would almost want to keep Dak because he tends to choke at the end of the year or in the playoffs, as we've seen. But from the front office standpoint of the Cowboys, if Dak isn't going to sign and that cap gets cut anyway, I don't think you're going to have a choice, even if you wanted to sign him. So yeah, I would throw Andy Dalton back there to lead the team.
Yeah, I think you can make that argument. Just because you paid so much. I mean, think about the guys Dallas has extended in the last 4 or 5 years. So like Martin, Tyron Smith, Jalen Smith. You've got guys like DeMarcus Lawrence, Zach Martin, Ezekiel Elliott, Amari Cooper, and you're paying Al Collins. You're paying so many guys a large money. I don't know how you would be able to put Dak under that salary cap, especially when the salary cap is going to be shrinking to accommodate the multi-billion-dollar revenue Los Angeles is going to take this year. So I don't really know how you would manage that. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I think if Dallas goes after Dak next year, I think Dak's a good quarterback, but this was his only year. This past season was the only year he's thrown for over 4,000 passing yards. So I don't think he's ever going to throw for 4,000. I don't think he's going to throw for 4,100 this coming year. Even if they added CD Lamb, I don't think it's going to happen again. So from my perspective, I think giving Dak Prescott $35 to $37 million a year would just be foolish at this point. Especially if you're at Dallas, you don't have that kind of cap room to spend in the first place.
Right. And for a guy who's only gotten to double-digit wins twice in his 4-year career, he went 8-8 last year. They went 10-6 the year before. They did win the division, but then they choked in the second round of the playoffs. 9-7 the year before that, and then 13-3 his rookie year. But like you said, I don't think you could look at Dak Prescott, look at the cap situation you have, and look at what he's asking for. Those 3 points of that triangle are not going to connect.
All right, so I want to ask you something real quickly. I just kind of off the cuff here, but we got some NFL news. We had the first player in the NFL to opt out of this upcoming season. It got announced, I think, last night, I'm pretty sure, as a starting guard for the Kansas City Chiefs. He's actually has a medical degree, so he's going to be using his time. Now he's going to be off, actually taking care of people. He's Canadian too, I believe. So he's going to be taking time off, but he's also going to be serving as an orderly up in Canada, helping people. I think these patients, they said on ESPN earlier today that their average age is 80 years old. These people affected with COVID-19. So he's going to be taking care of them. It's Laurent Duvernay-Tardif, I believe is his name. I hope I didn't say that wrong, but he is taking the year off, opting out of the season. And they have set in place a kind of benefits package where you'll receive a fraction of your salary for the year if you opt out. So he's not making millions of dollars, but he's making, I think, over $100,000, somewhere in that $200,000 range for the year. Mark, just off your cuff, how many people do you think will actually take advantage of this opt-out situation? Now there's a deal in place where you'll earn a portion of your salary if you opt out within a certain period of time.
To be honest, not many. I think a lot of these players want to play, and I think a lot of the science based in the COVID-19 situation is that, generally if you're a healthy young person, you can contract it, but you won't show symptoms and it won't be as tough on your body. And I think the NFL will take precautions anywhere. A lot of stadiums have come out and cities have come out saying they're not going to allow fans. If they do, it'll be limited capacity and you have to wear face masks anyway. So I think the NFL has taken enough safety precautions to accommodate the pandemic that's going to continue on for at least a couple months. So I don't think a lot of players are going to opt out. I understand him wanting to. I think his medical background probably plays into that a little bit. But a lot of these players without football, they wouldn't really have anything. And a lot of them have been training so hard in the offseason. For some reason, it feels like this offseason has been just about bulking up. Like I see Derrick Henry working out. I see all these players doing workouts that are just and they're getting shredded. So I don't think they're going to want that to go to waste. So I don't think a lot of players are going to opt out for the upcoming season.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of players will opt out either. I think if they do, it'll be more because of family concerns. Sometimes they want to be able to still see their children, their spouses, obviously. So someone in their family has a serious medical condition, I could see them opting out. Otherwise, I wouldn't do. I think they would just stick around, just because I think they want to play, obviously, and also you're not making a ton of money if you choose to opt out. You're still getting paid, which is obviously something that's good for you. But at the same point, you're not making the millions of dollars you ordinarily would. So I don't think we'll see a lot of guys opt out, especially because there are a lot of big players who are in contract years. there are certain players who can't afford to opt out because if they do, it might be the end of their NFL careers,
Right.
especially those back into the roster guys. So I would expect we'll see maybe a dozen to 2 dozen guys might opt out. I wouldn't expect much more than that in the NFL. There are some growing concerns about COVID-19 just because they've had testing for the rookies the other day. I know that I don't have exact numbers pulled up in front of me, but they came back with a decent number of positive tests, and only 9 teams had tested their rookies because not everyone's reported to camp yet. So, Mark, I did want to ask you, what do you think about the NFL taking this long to put in place? Because they have said training camp is beginning on time. What do you think about the NFL taking this long to actually put out some kind of guidelines and get in contact with the NFLPA and be like, hey, this is what we're doing. This is our plan for dealing with COVID-19 this season?
Right. I give them. I tend to do this a lot. I give them the benefit of the doubt because at the beginning of when the pandemic first hit mid-March, obviously NBA stopped play, NHL stopped play, and the MLB said we're delaying spring training because they were right in the middle of their seasons. NFL was over; they were in the off season, and I think a lot of people's assumption, myself and the NFL included, were like, all right, when summertime hits, these numbers will start to go down because the UV index will go up. It'll kill the virus between that and the heat. So this will all be over by the fall. We won't have to worry about it. Obviously, that hasn't happened. A lot of states are getting hit hard right now. So I think the NFL was just negligent with their assumption that this virus would go away by the end of the summer. So I give them the benefit of the doubt for that. But on the other hand, they should have treated it just like how universities were treating it, where you have plan A, where, okay, the virus disappears in the summer, and then you go to the fall, or plan B, where it doesn't. It looks like they just rely heavily on plan A. So for them to have this much time, 4 months almost, and to just have a plan in place a couple of days ago, was a little bit ridiculous. And I understand the players came out, a bunch of them on Twitter had frustration about the fact that there was nothing yet, and they got it solved quickly, sure. But it would have been solved a long time ago, especially with training camp so soon.
Yeah, I think they had an opportunity to correct this ahead of time, and they kind of waited. I mean, if you would have asked the NFL for a perfect case scenario, it would have been that would have kicked off right after the Super Bowl, which is essentially what happened because it got really bad right after the Super Bowl. And they would have had the entire offseason to kind of figure out what they were going to do. And it looks like they kind of just wasted it. They kind of just hoped it would go away, kind of turned a blind eye to it. And now they kind of rushed to put in the scenario here in the last minute. But they do have things in place. They do have a plan in place now. The NFL and the NFLPA have agreed to some precautions. They've set some stuff forward. Now, like I said, the opt-out, they have a deal in place for opt-outs. They have plans in place for testing. So it looks like they're doing better than they were originally. I still think it's kind of ridiculous that they waited this long, but it looks like we're still going to get everything in place in time for the regular season. But just the numbers I was talking about earlier, 12 rookies tested positive for COVID-19 the other day, but that was only from 9 NFL teams. So it's not like this. It's not like that was a draw from over 1,000 players, something like that. That was 12 rookies from 9 teams. Even if we say each team had 12 rookies, that's still a pretty high percentage. So I think the NFL is going to view, as we're getting back to training camp here, there's going to be a pretty high positive rate as opposed to what we see from the NBA, NHL, and MLB. So I think we're going to see it take maybe a little bit more time to get used to, or to get everyone back and ready to play football before the regular season begins.
Right. And that 12, just to update the total numbers, since March, that adding that 12 to the original numbers is 59 players since March have tested positive. But like you said, the rookies are only from 12 teams, and then the other 47 have just been kind of sporadic tests. So obviously when the mass testing comes into play, I think the numbers will go way up. And hopefully they'll handle that, like whether they have to quarantine, similar to what the NBA made those players do in the bubble. But hopefully, I mean, we don't know every detail of the plan, but I'm assuming the NFL and the NFLPA have it down pat. So
yeah, or they're actually negotiating it right now, hoping they can get it in place by the end of the day. They're doing something. I'm not entirely sure what it is, but they're planning on something right now. But anyway, that's going to wrap it up for today. We're around the 30-minute mark, so we're going to call it here. But Mark, do you have anything you want to plug, anything you want to talk about right now before we end the show?
No, you hit all the points that I was actually going to bring up with the COVID situation, but you brought it up. So I'm glad you did that. So, yeah, you hit all the points I wanted to. All good on my end. All
right. Well, you can follow The Grueling Truth at Grueling Truth on Twitter. We're constantly posting new articles, and we're doing shows. I think we're streaming. We're basically putting out old boxing matches and old baseball matches almost every every other day or so at this point. You can listen to our show Survive in Advance tomorrow at 7 on The Grueling Truth or here on Facebook Live. And you can tune in Monday for another episode of the NFL show. Mike Goodpaster will be back to the host. I'll be co-hosting with him, so we'll have a little fun there. And you can, of course, follow The Grueling Truth, like I said, on Twitter. Follow me on Twitter as well at Sam_Teets33. The link should be in the description of the Facebook Live and also on YouTube. But thank you again for tuning in today. I hope you enjoyed the show. Mark, we'll have you back for an episode in the future. I promise you that. But thanks for coming on today, Mark. Hope everyone enjoyed the show.